Hey everybody, it's EJ from EYEDESYN.com, and today I have a really fun tutorial for you on how you can trigger cloth using fields in Cinema 4D R20. Now this is going to create like kind of Houdini-ish type of stuff, so it's really fun. Really quick tip for you. Can't wait to see what you guys do with it. Let's check it out. Alright, so let's first create our object that we want to clothify. And for just simplicity's case, I'm just going to use a trusty cube here. Okay, cubes are always fun. And let's make this nice and shiny gold. So I'll just apply that material there as well. Now, the first thing you need to know about using cloth, or if you use soft body dynamics, you need to have a lot more subdivisions. Now, if I go to the garage shading lines, a lot more subdivisions than just the 6 polygons we have right now. And that's where we're going to amp up the segments here of our cube. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Say 20 by 20 by 20. I think that should be pretty good. And that's basically it. Now, one thing that you can do is you can have this have like an inner shell, so the cloth will then collide into like a smaller cube, so you can still see the outward form of this cube. So we can go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to command click and drag to duplicate the cube, and I'm just going to rename this cube collider and just make it a little bit smaller. Okay, now you might not be using a primitive, so using a primitive you would just kind of scale these options down and that would look good. But what if you have a more complex object? Now what I want to do is show you how you can kind of offset the surface boundaries, like kind of shrink the surface of your polygon, shrink it all inwards, by using a really simple technique, which is just going up and grabbing a, a displacer, making it a child of your object. And let me just go and let's just make this a little bit bigger because we can actually see it on the outside. So that's the outer cube collider now. If I go into the shading tab of the displacer and just load up a simple color channel, you're going to see this just beefed up our cube and actually pushed out the edges of the polygons. And this is because we're displacing all of the polygons by a height of 10 centimeters. Now we don't need to push it out. We need to push the polygons inward. So I'll give it a height of like -3. And if I turn off the cube, you can see, yep, there's our inner cube collider there. So that's basically it. If you have a more complex object, you want to push in the polygons and have them shrink a little bit inwards, just add a displacer, add a negative height. And for this, I'm just going to go ahead and actually for this cube collider, I don't need all these subdivisions, so I'm just going to keep it low, but you can still see it's just slightly smaller than my cube. And let's just make it a little bit smaller, just so we don't have any like intersections of the cloth and the collider that can cause some issues. Okay, so with that done, I'm just going to right click, go to current state to object, and there's my cube collider. I can keep this as a copy or just delete it, but there's my cube collider. You can see it right under there. Okay, now to apply cloth to an object, you actually need to make it editable first. So very important step. I'm going to hit C to make this cube editable. I'm just going to name this cube cloth. Okay, and then I'm just going to right click and let's add some cloth. So go to simulation, cloth. There we go. And then for the cloth collider, I'm going to right click, go to simulation tags, and go to cloth collider. Very aptly named. So now we can go to our cloth and let's just hit play, see what we got. So right now we just have this kind of sagging down. Nothing too interesting there. And I have a camera move already built in. But you can see it's just kind of falling down. Now what we can do is just kind of go into the forces, get rid of the gravity, and maybe we just have the size percentage increase a little bit to maybe, 145 or something like that. And what this allows the polygons to do is stretch and grow to a size of 145% of the original size of those polygons. So you can see that we just have this really nice explosion kind of thing happening. Now we can go ahead and like adjust some of these stiffness values and inflection values and the rubber values, and you can find out more about cloth in general in some of my older tutorials that I will link in the description here, but I don't want to get too caught up in that because what I want to do is show you how you can trigger this animation. Okay, now first thing you're going to see is that this looks fairly chunky. So let's go ahead and add a subdivision surface. I'm going to hold the Alt or Option key down when I let go just to make that a child of the, that's the collider. Whoops, selected the wrong thing. But if you hold the Alt or Option key down and with the object selected, it'll actually add it on top of that. So that's just smooths everything out really nice. Also slows things down as well. And let's see. Looks like something was happening with the collider. We're seeing a little bit. I think just switching the subdivision surface screwed something up. So this is looking really nice now. Nice and smooth and pillowy and really, really good stuff. So what we can start to do now is set this up for being triggered. Now the problem with just normal cloth is when you hit play, it just automatically starts, right? So what we need to do is we need to figure out a way we can hold these points of all the vertices of this object to not be affected by cloth, and then drive the cloth simulation and trigger the cloth simulation by using a field, like a linear field or something like that. Now what we need to do is make it so this object, this cloth, does not move until we tell it to. And the thing we're going to use for that is called the belt, the cloth belt. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to select the cloth that you want to belt down. We're going to tie it down so it can't move. And we're going to right click, go to Simulation Tags, Cloth Belt. And what you're going to do is need to define what object you want to belt this onto. And I can belt this onto the cube collider. If you're not using a collider, you can just simply create a random object, make it editable, and just hide it and do that. But for right now, I'm just going to hide my cloth collider and just use that as the belt. Okay, so I'm going to drag and drop the cloth collider into this belt on field. And then what I need to do is set the point. So since this works by points, I need to go into point mode and just hit Command A to select all of the points on this cloth cube, go back into my belt, and then hit set. And what'll happen is all those vertices will change from that orange to this bright yellow. That'll let us know that this is actually working, okay? So what happens when you belt something on? Well, you're going to hit play and nothing's going to move. None of these vertices, none of these points are going to move. And you can actually see all those points still there. So I'm just going to go to my belt tag, uncheck draw so I don't see that cluttering up my viewport. But you can see that my cloth is not doing anything at all because all the vertices are locked and belted on to this cube collider. So what's controlling the influence of this belt tag is this influence. And if I decrease the percentage of influence, you can see that I'm slowly bringing back and releasing those vertices to be impacted by the cloth. So what I need to do is figure out how I can control this influence using fields. And with R20, you have the ability to affect vertex maps, and this is exactly how you can control this. We have this map field. We need to create a vertex map. And what we can do with that is then use fields to control the vertex map, okay? So to create a vertex map, it's super easy. I'm just going to click on this cloth cube. I'm going to go over to the character menu, go to the paint tool, and I'm just simply going to paint. Click right on to our cube cloth, and you can see that created my weight or my vertex map, okay? And what I'm going to do is check on this use fields. It's going to have this freeze layer. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. And what I'm going to do is just create like a linear field. And what you're going to notice is when I go to my move tool, I can now control the vertex map using this linear field, which is really awesome. Now, what we can do with this vertex map is control the influence of the belt tag here. So basically whatever is, let me just hit play. So whatever is yellow is going to have 100% influence of that belt. Now, as I pass this through, you see this red gradient kind of passing through, and it's removing the influence of the belt. So we are controlling the cloth simply with this linear field, which is so cool and so powerful. Like I can go backwards and forwards. I can use different types of fields. Just really amazing control that was not possible, at least very easily without like any scripting or Python, to be able to control this with just Mograph effectors and fields and all this good stuff. And it's like, this is real time. Like this is not very slow at all. I can control this, this cloth kind of taking shape and I can have multiple fields affecting this and triggering the different parts of this cube cloth and all this good stuff. So just extremely powerful and flexible stuff to be able to control cloth like this. And cloth, again, I feel like is not used very often because now you have Houdini and stuff like that, but this is just incredibly cool and very powerful. So one thing you can do is you can see that one of the problems with this is when we pass this through, let's have this play again. You can see that it inflates nicely, but when I pass this back through, it kind of just snaps. So what I'm going to do is add a Jiggle deformer to this, okay? So I can actually just remove this linear field from being a child of the cube cloth. And then what I'm going to do is go to my Deformers menu and just grab, let's grab a smoothing first, okay? So we can just smooth everything out. I'm just gonna crank this up. So just smoothing out some of those details just ever so slightly, just maybe a stiffness of 95. And then what I'm gonna do is go back into my Deformers menu and let's grab one of my favorite deformers, the Jiggle deformer, and I'm going to place that right underneath the cloth because I want the jiggle to happen first and then the smoothing to smooth out all of the action that's coming from the jiggle. So if I go ahead and hit play now, you can see we have this really nice jiggly property to our cloth. And now when I snap this back, you can see it's a lot more jiggly and not so stiff when we remove the cloth simulation there. Now, this cloth or the jiggle is a little bit too jiggly, so let's go ahead and maybe remove some of the structural, and this will kind of create less of those oscillations and maybe increase the drag a little bit to dampen and have those springs that make up the jiggle. The jiggles kind of come to a rest quicker, so maybe a structural of 55 and a stiffness of 50 should be good. And let's just see what this looks like. And let's just have this pass through. Looking good as far as getting triggered. It's getting triggered, folks. And then once we push this back in and remove the cloth, it has this really nice, gradual, graceful, if I do say so myself, graceful return to not having that cloth simulation happening. So really great stuff. And again, maybe we can adjust the structural a little bit more and just really get this looking the way we want to. Okay, so you can see with the structural pretty much all the way down, we're not getting much ripples, but if I bring the structural up, check out what happens. We get more of these nice little kind of waves and stuff like that, nice little ripples. So maybe we just leave the structural at 100%. So it always helps to kind of understand what's going on with the Jiggle deformer. Again, I have Jiggle deformer tutorials all over the place. I'll link to them in the description as well. But hopefully this really helps you open your eyes to the possibility of resurrecting and giving a little bit more love to the cloth tag and being able to trigger this kind of like, people might think like, oh, is this Houdini? You're like, no, this is OG cloth in C4D, yo. So have fun with this and enjoy. All right, so how stinking easy is that to be able to control cloth, trigger cloth with fields and vertex maps? Now, all those additions to R20, like fields, and just that unification of all the things you can now control with fields and Mograph effectors is just so crazy powerful. And I feel like this just kind of scratches the surface of what is possible, even with using this technique. You can add up a bunch of different effectors or fields. You can add random fields on top of it to make it a little bit more organic looking. There's a lot to do with this technique, so be sure to explore, experiment. If you make anything, please share it with me. I always love seeing what everyone is doing out there using these tutorial techniques. Tag me on Instagram. Tag me on Instagram stories. I love sharing them to my own story. If you're on MySpace, do that. MySpace is cool, right? That's what the kids are up to. But share it with me wherever you want to. Again, love seeing what you're all doing. If you have any questions about anything I covered in this tutorial, please leave them in the comment section below. If you just want to say hi or thanks, leave that in the comments section too. Love seeing that. I'll respond to all of those comments. So appreciate you guys watching as always. And if you like this tutorial, please hit the like button. If you like what I'm doing here, please subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. And always so grateful for you taking the time out to watch and learn with me. So I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.